Hey guys, tonight we are going to wander back through thousands of years, past the glow of our screens and cities, into the dust and clay tablets of the world's very first civilizations. You find yourself beneath a heavy Mesopotamian sky, where the rivers Tigris and Euphrates meet in endless swirls of mud and reeds. It smells like wet earth and smoke from fires burning in reed houses. The ground is soft under your sandals, and you hear the hum of insects. So yes, bug spray is thousands of years too late for you. This is the place where gods once walked among humans, or at least where humans imagined that they did. You probably won't survive this ancient trip, unless you're very good at dodging floods, famines, and the occasional divine temper tantrum. But don't worry, I'll guide you gently through the story. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening right now, drop a quick comment with your location and the local time where you are. It is always fun to see where this sleepy caravan of listeners comes from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You tread carefully along the riverbank as twilight drapes the land. In the soft darkness, temple towers rise like shadowy mountains, their brick steps leading skyward. These are ziggurats, the stairways between earth and heaven, where the Anunnaki are believed to descend when the priests call them. The name itself sounds like a whisper from the past. Anunnaki, those of royal blood, or maybe the offspring of Anu, the great sky father. Historians still argue whether the Anunnaki were seen as a tight council of 7 gods, or a sprawling assembly of 50. Either way, their presence looms large in this fertile crescent. The Sumerians, who lived here around 3100 BCE, scratched stories into clay with reeds, telling of gods who sculpted the world like artisans shaping clay pots. You imagine the scratching sound. Tap, press, wedge tiny triangles pressed into wet mud. Somewhere, a scribe sighs, because writing is tedious, but at least it beats hauling mud bricks all day. These stories preserve the cosmic hierarchy, where Anu, god of the heavens, sits at the top. His children Enlil, the stern lord of air and storms, and Enki, the sly trickster of wisdom and water, are the ones you'll spend a lot of time with. The Anunnaki aren't just abstract beings. They hover in myths that tell how cities rise, how kings rule, and how floods wipe the slate clean. Archaeologists digging at Uruk and Eridu have found temple remains layered like cakes, baked and rebuilt over centuries. Each layer whispers of ritual meals, incense burned, and prayers muttered into the night. You picture a priest balancing a bowl of beer on his head in some solemn ritual, and you wonder if the gods appreciated the offering, or just laughed at the headgear. The quirky thing about these gods? They're not perfect. They bicker like siblings on a road trip, argue about humanity's usefulness, and sometimes get jealous of our noisy parties. One flood myth says the gods wanted humans wiped out because we were just too loud. Imagine being so annoying that the divine solution is global annihilation talk about thin patience. But there's a deeper note too. These myths are survival guides, born of a land where rivers flood unpredictably, scorching heat follows, and crops fail without warning. The gods mirror the chaos of the environment. You never really know if they'll bless you with fertile fields or drown you in a sudden flood. Historians still argue whether the stories reflect actual ancient catastrophes or symbolic warnings. Either way, as you drift through this early world, you see why people needed the Anunnaki. They gave faces and names to the chaos around them. The wind along the river picks up, ruffling your robe. A faint glow burns at the ziggurat's top, torches flickering. Priests are chanting in the darkness, their words winding upward, calling the Anunnaki down from their heavenly halls. The air feels heavier, as if someone or something is listening. And so your long walk into their myth begins, step by step into the shadows of the world's first gods. The chamber quiets, as though the gods have grown weary of their endless bickering. A different hush falls over you, less political, more intimate. It is the silence of clay in the hands of a potter, damp and cool, waiting to become something new. This is the moment when the Anunnaki, tired of doing all the heavy lifting themselves, decide it's time to create helpers. And those helpers, inconveniently, are you. The myth of human creation is one of the most fascinating and awkward episodes in Mesopotamian lore. According to the Atrahasis epic, the lesser gods were exhausted. They had been digging canals, hauling clay, and maintaining the world's infrastructure for far too long. One day, they rebelled. They threw down their tools and marched to the gates of Enlil's house, shouting that they were done being the universe's ditch diggers. Historians still argue whether this reflects real memories of social uprisings among laborers in early Mesopotamian cities, but the parallel is hard to miss. So the senior gods called a council. Their solution? Humans. The Anunnaki would fashion a new being, capable of doing the manual labor the gods no longer wanted to touch. You can almost imagine Enki, with his sly grin, sketching out blueprints. Take some clay, add divine essence, stir well, and voila workers who never unionize. Spoiler, we definitely unionize. Here is the quirky tidbit. Some versions say the clay used to form humans was mixed with the blood of a sacrificed god. The unlucky deity, often identified as Kingu, was executed so his life force could be infused into humanity. The symbolism is clear. We are both earthy and divine, mud and blood. It also makes for an unsettling origin story. Imagine being told your existence comes from recycled cosmic leftovers. Kind of humbling, right? Archaeological evidence supports the centrality of clay in Mesopotamian life. Bricks, tablets, vessels, everything was shaped from it. The idea that humans, too, were formed from clay would have felt natural. You can almost feel the squish of mud between your fingers. The same sensation that a Sumerian potter felt while shaping a jar, or that a mythical divine midwife felt while sculpting humanity's first bodies. The birth of humans wasn't just a matter of shape, though. The gods had to breathe life into us. In some myths, Enki and Ninhursag, the mother goddess, whispered incantations over the clay figures, giving them voices, senses, and motion. You picture yourself lying in darkness, a lump of earth, when suddenly a cool breath fills your chest. Your eyes blink open to a world of reeds, rivers, and gods who look down on you with a mix of pride and impatience. Mainstream historians agree that this story reflects the agricultural backbone of Mesopotamia. Humans were created to irrigate, plant, and harvest. The gods' labor had become ours. But in doing so, we gained something more: purpose. To till the soil was not just survival, it was cosmic duty. If you've ever complained about your job, imagine knowing it was literally assigned to you by divine decree. That thought doesn't exactly make pulling weeds more fun, but it does give it some grandeur. There's also a strange tenderness in these myths. While humans were made to serve, the gods sometimes worried about us, even cared for us. Enki, especially, intervenes to help humanity when the workload becomes unbearable. It's like your overworked manager sneaking you coffee breaks when corporate policy forbids them. Historians still argue whether this sympathy reflects changing views of humanity's dignity in ancient texts. But it's comforting to think that even trickster gods wanted us to catch a breath. Of course, our usefulness had limits. When humans multiplied too quickly, became noisy, or failed to give proper offerings, the gods grew irritated. In one story, humanity's clamor was so unbearable that Enlil sent plagues and famine to thin the herd. Apparently, the gods hadn't anticipated that giving mud and blood creatures voices might backfire. You wonder how many sleepless nights Enlil endured, listening to the racket from his divine bedroom. You sit in the quiet hall, running your hand along the stone wall, as though tracing the memory of that first shaping. You are clay, but you are also something more. You carry within you the rebellion of the lesser gods, the sacrifice of a divine being, and the breath of life stolen from the cosmos. That mix makes you fragile, noisy, and endlessly restless. But it also makes you human, the very thing the Anunnaki both desired and resented. The lamps sputter, and the scent of clay rises in your imagination, as if the walls themselves are whispering. Remember where you came from. Remember that you were shaped for labor, but you became storytellers, dreamers. And ironically, the ones who would one day write down the names of the very gods who made you. You keep walking across the terrace, your sandals whispering against the dust. A carved stone doorframe opens into a hall where flickering oil lamps paint shadows along the walls. The air is warmer here, thicker with incense. It feels like stepping into a council chamber, except instead of men in suits and ties, you're surrounded by gods with storm cloud eyes and river water beards. The Anunnaki, in this moment, are less abstract forces and more like a divine committee, each with an opinion, each eager to have the final word. At the head of the chamber sits Enlil, the stern air god, his jaw clenched like a general ready to bark orders. Across from him lounges Enki, the clever one, already smirking as if he knows how to outmaneuver everyone. Anu hovers like an absent chairman, his presence felt more than seen. Then there's Inanna, restless, tapping her foot with a mix of charm and impatience, ready to argue her case. If you've ever sat through a long office meeting where everyone thinks they read the smartest in the room, well, congratulations. You understand the flavor of a divine council. Mainstream history confirms that Mesopotamian myths often portray the gods as gathering in assemblies to make decisions. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, for instance, the gods debate whether to punish Gilgamesh's reckless adventures. In the Atrahasis flood story, they vote yes, literally vote on whether humanity should be destroyed for being too noisy. Historians still argue whether these council scenes reflect actual political practices in Sumer, where city elders and kings also met in assemblies. It's entirely possible the myths projected familiar human politics into the heavens. The quirky tidbit here? In some stories, the council meetings aren't orderly at all. They resemble family squabbles, with gods shouting, storming off, or trying to outwit each other. Enki, in particular, seems to thrive in this chaos, slipping in clever suggestions, bending the rules, and whispering secrets to humans on the side. One myth even shows him getting so drunk at a banquet that he accidentally hands over cosmic powers to Inanna. Imagine the most important board meeting in the universe evolving into karaoke night, and you get the idea. The power struggles can be brutal. Enlil, for instance, once banished his own father, Anu, to the heavens, claiming Earth and the atmosphere for himself. Later, he drives his brother Enki into trouble for meddling too much with human affairs. These are not gentle gods. Their rivalries shape the destinies of cities, kings, and ordinary farmers. You can almost picture them leaning over clay tablets that map out humanity's fate, bickering about whether the harvest will be plentiful or whether the Euphrates will flood. From an archaeological angle, temples often contain multiple shrines within the same complex, each dedicated to different deities. This suggests that worshippers saw the divine realm as a network of competing yet cooperating forces. No single god dominated completely. It is a reminder that ancient people didn't imagine the cosmos as a tidy hierarchy. It was messy, political, and sometimes petty. Historians still argue whether this mirrors the unstable alliances of Mesopotamian city-states, where kings formed coalitions one season and waged war the next. You sit at the edge of the hall, watching the debate unfold in your imagination. Enlil bangs a staff against the floor, demanding silence. Inanna argues that humanity deserves another chance because she enjoys the drama we provide. Enki nods along, half for mischief and half because he secretly likes humans. And somewhere in the corner, a lesser Anunnaki mutters about wanting a raise in the form of better offerings. The tension in the room builds, and you sense that every decision here ripples outward. A famine in Lagash? That's the fallout of a divine argument. A war in Kish? Perhaps the council voted for it. Even your dreams tonight might feel like echoes of their disputes. It is comforting and unsettling at once. The idea that the universe is run by beings who are majestic, yes, but also as argumentative as a group chat at midnight. As the oil lamps sputter, you notice carvings on the wall. Winged figures, each holding a bucket and pinnacle-shaped object. Scholars still debate their meaning. Were these depictions of the Anunnaki performing purification rituals? Or just symbolic guardians? The pinnacle might represent fertility, or perhaps the transfer of divine essence. The ambiguity lingers like smoke in the chamber. You lean back against the cool stone and let the sounds of the imagined council wash over you. Raised voices, whispered conspiracies, the shuffle of sandals. Somewhere outside, a real-world priest chants softly to the night sky, bridging human ritual with divine politics. The Anunnaki, in all their quarrels and decrees, are not distant abstractions. They are alive here, arguing in the shadows, deciding the rhythms of the world you walk through. The steps beneath your feet flatten into a broad terrace. You pause to catch your breath, gazing out across the flat Mesopotamian plain. The rivers gleam like silver ribbons in the moonlight, while distant fires mark the sleeping cities. From this height, the land feels like a giant clay tablet itself, waiting for words, names, and stories to be pressed into it. And that's exactly what the ancient scribes did. They gave the Anunnaki their names, and through those names, power. The word itself, Anunnaki, is slippery. On one hand, it seems to mean offspring of Anu, the sky god. That would make them the divine aristocracy, a celestial family tree spreading out across myths and rituals. On the other hand, some scholars argue it might carry the sense of those of royal seed, linking them less to genealogy and more to cosmic authority. The catch? Historians still argue whether the earliest uses of the word even meant gods at all. Some texts blur the line, suggesting Anunnaki could also be a title for underworld judges, not lofty sky dwellers. You picture a scribe hunched over a clay tablet in Nippur, carefully scratching wedge marks into damp earth. Maybe he pauses, sighs, and wonders whether to call these beings Anunnaki or something else. That's the quirky tidbit. Even in antiquity, the word shifted meaning depending on who was writing and when. Some texts mention 50 Anunnaki ruling the underworld. Others 7 Anunnaki shaping fate from the heavens. If you're confused, congratulations. You've joined a scholarly debate that's been running for over 4,000 years. But what matters more than the number is the role. The Anunnaki are always tied to the cosmic order. In hymns, they're invoked as the great gods of heaven and earth, decreeing destinies, deciding the outcomes of wars, and overseeing the rise and fall of kings. It's like an ancient board of directors, except instead of quarterly profits, they decide whether your crops will survive the flood season. Cuneiform tablets from the old Babylonian period list them in long genealogies, pairing them with star constellations or giving them ceremonial duties. Archaeologists digging at Uruk and Uruk have uncovered not just tablets, but also cylinder seals, tiny carved stones used like stamps that show lines of divine figures marching in procession. Some seals have captions hinting that these might be the Anunnaki, though historians still argue whether the figures are specific gods or generic divine attendants. Either way, their image is everywhere, small, repetitive, orderly. What's striking is how bureaucratic it all feels. You imagine the Anunnaki sitting in council chambers, each with a clay tablet of responsibilities. You handle storms. You oversee harvests. You judge the souls of the dead. You, make sure humans don't get too loud. The idea of divine paperwork may sound dull, But for the Sumerians, it was deadly serious. The universe was fragile, and if the gods didn't keep to their roles, the world could unravel. Still, there's a playful undercurrent. In some myths, the Anunnaki aren't just administrators. They're tricksters, allies, and sometimes enemies of humankind. They shape clay into bodies, breathe life into humans, and then complain that we eat too much of their offerings. One fringe interpretation, popularized much later, claims the Anunnaki were actually extraterrestrials who named humanity into existence by tinkering with DNA modern scientists. Of course, point out there's zero evidence of ancient astronauts hiding in Sumerian grammar. But the fascination with their name, Anunnaki, lives on, partly because the word feels heavy with mystery. You lean against the temple wall, tracing imaginary cuneiform wedges with your finger. Each mark is tiny, but together they form names that echo across millennia. Anu, Enlil, Enki, Inanna, and the collective Anunnaki. To speak or write these names was to tap into divine order. It's as though every letter carried a vibration, a reminder that humans and gods were linked by words as much as by rituals. And that, perhaps, is the greatest historical fact here. Writing itself emerged in Mesopotamia, not just for record keeping, but for religious storytelling. The very invention of literacy is tangled with the names of the Anunnaki. When you whisper their names tonight, you're echoing the world's first writers, who believed those syllables kept the universe intact. The night air cools as you linger on the terrace. The chanting below has faded, replaced by the distant croak of frogs in the marshes. You close your eyes and almost hear the scratch of stylus on clay. The endless repetition of names, the bureaucratic hum of a cosmos run by gods who are at once majestic and oddly human. You take a breath and step forward again, ready to follow these names into the deeper stories they hold. You stand at the foot of a ziggurat, its mud brick steps rising above you like a giant staircase to the heavens. The torchlight dances, and the chanting continues. Your mind drifts upward into the night sky, where the stars glimmer faintly. This is the realm of Anu, the father of the gods, lord of the highest heavens. He doesn't visit Earth, often think of him as the aloof CEO who leaves middle management to handle the daily chaos. Still, his presence is everywhere. The word Anu itself means heaven, and the Anunnaki are often called his children or attendants. Below Anu is Enlil, and he is not the kind of guy you want to disappoint. Enlil is the god of air, storms, and authority, and when he decides something, the rest of the cosmos tends to obey. In one story, he separated heaven from earth, giving order to the universe. But he also has a reputation for harshness. Once, he ordered a plague to punish humans just because we were being noisy. Imagine a divine landlord banging on the ceiling with a broomstick because the tenants downstairs are partying. Historians still argue whether these tales reflect actual social anxieties, like crowded cities, or just theological metaphors. Either way, Enlil is the disciplinarian in this pantheon. And then there's Enki. Enki is everyone's favorite trickster uncle, the god of water, wisdom, magic, and creation. He's clever enough to bend rules without breaking them. In the myth of the flood, when the gods decide to wipe out humanity, it's Enki who sneaks a warning to a chosen human, so at least some of us survive. You can almost picture him smirking while whispering secrets from behind his watery beard. Archaeologists studying early Mesopotamian cities note that shrines to Enki, especially in Eridu, were centers of learning and craft. People prayed to him not just for survival, but for cleverness, the divine cheat code. Together, Anu, Enlil, and Enki form the backbone of the Anunnaki story. But they're far from alone. There's Inanna, the goddess of love and war, yes, both at once, because why not complicate things? She can seduce gods and humans alike, then turn around and lead armies into battle. There's Ninhursag, the mother goddess, tied to mountains and fertility. These figures weave in and out of myths, like recurring characters on a long-running series. Some episodes are about cosmic order, others about family drama, and sometimes it's just about whether humans deserve to stick around. A quirky tidbit here? Inanna once stole the sacred Emmi, a collection of divine decrees that covered everything from kingship to, oddly enough, beer brewing. She got Enki drunk and tricked him into handing them over. This divine heist explains how Uruk became the cultural hub of Mesopotamia. Imagine if Las Vegas got its power by outdrinking the gods themselves. Historians still argue whether the me represent abstract concepts or actual ritual objects. Either way, the myth highlights how much the Sumerians valued knowledge, law, and yes, beer. You walk deeper into the temple courtyard. Priests shuffle past with offerings. Bread, dates, bowls of milk. The smell of burning incense fills the air, heavy and sweet. Every offering feeds the gods, not physically but ritually. The Sumerians believed the Anunnaki depended on human attention to remain powerful. That's the awkward paradox. You were created by the gods, but they also kind of need you. It's like running a fan club for celebrities who secretly require your devotion to stay relevant. Above you, the constellations shimmer. Ancient sky watchers carved them into stories, believing the gods arranged the stars. Anu's realm was the sky itself. Enlil's domain was the space between, and Enki's was the watery deep below. This cosmic layering gave order to the chaos of the world. You can imagine lying on your reed mat at night, looking at the Milky Way, and wondering if the Anunnaki were watching from up there, maybe debating whether tomorrow will bring rain or famine. One mainstream fact that grounds all this: cuneiform tablets from sites like Nippur, dating back to the 2nd millennium BCE, explicitly list the Anunnaki as judges of the underworld and attendants of the great gods. They're not a fringe invention, but part of the core Mesopotamian religious worldview. And yet, over time, their exact number and roles shift as myths and empires evolve. Historians still argue whether the Anunnaki were originally just a small circle of 7 major gods or a broader assembly of 50. Your feet echo on the stone as you climb the steps. The higher you go, the stronger the wind, tugging at your robe. The chant of the priests below fades into a low hum. You sense the presence of beings beyond human scale. Stern Enlil, clever and